Just an FYI for this video, I'm mainly gonna talk about how I feel about Gacha and Wuthering Waves right now, what's been going on with the channel, what is its future and my other future projects, and what changes are you going to see as a result on this channel moving forward. Also, if you came here for a Wuthering Waves Doom post or anything like that, I will have to disappoint you. This video isn't about that. So how do I feel about Wuthering Waves and Gacha at the moment? Honestly, not that great. The best way I can describe it is extremely burnt out. But that's not even the main reason. When referring to Wuthering Waves specifically, I feel like I'm back in the point where I was in version 1.4, which was basically on the brink of quitting the game until 2.0 came out. But this time, however, I feel like no matter what they release, it's not gonna replicate what 2.0 did to veteran players. It's not likely to reignite their interest in the game significantly, at least from my perspective. That being 3 years of active play in these types of gacha games with Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and now Wuthering Waves. And truth be told, I was already kind of burnt out on Star Rail, and for whatever reason I played Wuthering Waves, and even though it did have its moments, I feel like I'm just severely burnt out from this formula. And if you want me to be honest, I feel like this formula is still stuck 5 years in the past, from its initial inception in Genshin Impact's launch. And just like pretty much every single genre in gaming, it got complacent with its success, and it did not have nearly enough competition to breed innovation in it. As a result, for some of us, we're stuck playing this slop for 5 years straight. Luckily, I did not play it for that long, but 3 years is plenty enough. And so this isn't necessarily a Wuthering Waves exclusive problem, but it is connected to what Wuthering Waves did. For me, there has not been a gacha game where I have felt more mixed about than Wuthering Waves. What I mean by that is, every single time they do a good thing, it is shortly followed by a bad thing, or players discovering something not so good, and vice versa. And it's honestly just tiring for me. I don't really want to deal with that much. I understand that this is the development process and is basically inevitable to a certain extent. But again, mainly it just feels like the genre hasn't moved significantly past its bare bones template that Genshin Impact laid out. And I already know what people are going to say. Oh, Wuthering Waves did this better, that better. But that's not what I'm talking about. For me, all of these games are pretty much the same, and quality of life features are nice, but they're not really that important. I don't want to play Genshin Impact from 5 years ago with quality of life features. I want to play what Genshin Impact could have been. A game that executes on its potential, and I'm not saying that it needs to nail that down and be a perfect game, but it can be so much better, especially with the amount of profit they generate. Now, moving on to the other aspect of this, the community. Now, I didn't really realize at the time that one of the big reasons why I stick to playing these games so consistently was the discussion about them. And to put it simply, the atmosphere in the Gacha community right now is quite uncomfortable. The best way to put it is that vibes are off. Now, I don't know if I'm the only person who feels this way, but the gacha community simply just does not feel the same as it did even like a couple of months ago. And so I'm just not really that interested in engaging in content associating with gacha games because of that vibe. And when you put that on top of pretty much playing the exact same game for 3 years quite consistently, I can't really see how this wouldn't happen. And also I had this weird thing where I felt like I needed to keep up and know exactly what a gacha game experience is right now. What I mean by this is I played these games consistently, doing the dailies, doing the events, not all the time. But the point being is, for whatever reason, the initial Genshin experience I had left such a deep impression on me that I felt that it is important for me to upkeep and essentially journal my experience with gacha games and where it gets better, where it gets worse, and basically know everything about these games with the purpose of somehow improving these games, of giving my feedback, etc. Now that I look back on it, it is quite peculiar, but I think I'm over it now. And maybe I will make some videos in the future discussing these experiences, what I've learned and what I've experienced. As someone who doesn't really have any external motive for doing it in the first place, aside from trying to make the games better. I didn't have any financial motive for playing it for 3 years or anything really like that. And coming back to Wuthering Waves, I just really feel like it doesn't really matter what they add, what they change. At its core, the game won't really change, and I think we all know that. It won't have any drastic changes aside from them just removing certain features or mechanics from the game. That's pretty much the most that will happen. And when I mean the core, I genuinely mean the core. Like the core progression systems of character, power, etc. If any of you guys have played RPGs, MMORPGs, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. The power progression in these gacha games is very poor. It has basically none of the appealing features that MMORPGs had. Nothing about power progression is satisfying. Maybe you could argue getting some constellations or character weapons are, but I think that's exactly where the problem is. If the only somewhat satisfying and meaningful progression is from basically spending money or saving up pulls and grinding pulls, I think that's pretty problematic. And hopefully we can start moving outside of this Genshin template sooner or later. I also could talk about how gacha companies potentially don't want to make gachas anymore and just make AAA games, but I'll leave that discussion for another video. Now moving on to this channel. Now if you've watched some of my videos in the past or have browsed my channel, you might have noticed there's only like 6 videos in the last 3 months. Now why is that? Why do I not make more videos? Well, I did. In fact, over the last 3 months, I've worked on probably more than 5 times the amount of videos that actually got released. Some of them in the finished idea phase, some of them half edited, and some of them even fully edited and packaged. The only thing that I didn't do was post them. Now why is that? Aside from just not being all that happy with the video for whatever reason when I was working on it or when I finished producing it, as I mentioned before, I felt like I was kind of already burnt out with these types of gacha games. And so it took me a long time of thinking and reflecting on why I didn't enjoy some of the content I was making, or why did I not release it, or why did I scrap it. And what I was doing by making these videos was just burning myself out even more. And now that the vibe of the community simply is not the same as it used to be, I realized that these confines are not what I want to place on myself of covering these gacha games all the time. So what I'm planning to do instead is to branch out to general gaming and talking about games in general, or whatever I really feel like. I like gacha games, I see a lot of potential in them, but they are far from the only games I like, and in fact the experiences I have in a lot of games I've played are simply far better a lot of the times than anything these gacha games can offer. However, one thing they can offer is the long-term play. Albeit not very satisfactory, you can play these games consistently for quite a while. And also just being able to talk about whatever I feel like talking about opens the doors for so much more content. And I feel like this is the right move to do, especially this early on. It is better to just kind of soft relaunch my channel now than later, or be stuck with just covering gacha games for the rest of its lifespan. So what does this really mean for the channel moving forward? I plan on making content far more consistently for at least the coming month and enter the discovery phase of my channel, where I try and test all sorts of things, try to build a community, probably gonna make a Discord server sooner or later and try my best to release daily content if I can, or as frequently as I can for at least this first month. And also further down the line, I have 2 more projects I'm quite excited about. One of them being a channel mascot of sorts, or like a VTuber model. I've had the idea in the works for a very long time already on like the character design, but of course the execution is probably gonna take way longer. But another project that is closer is my secondary channel that is going to be focused on gaming challenges specifically. So what I'm basically going to be doing is just making challenge content around whatever game I feel like. And obviously those videos are going to take way more time in editing and recording, but it's really something I want to do and try my hand at. And I already have a video in works for that channel. And as I mentioned on this channel, I'm entering the discovery phase, so you can expect a lot more varied content that isn't specifically covering gacha games, and that is probably not going to cover them unless I feel like something significant enough happened to where I want to cover it. But in general, I'm just gonna cover gaming or whatever I really feel like talking about, and I'm just going to try to deliver it as consistently as I can. Now, there's probably things I've missed or failed to mention, but that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. And if you watched this far, I appreciate your time for hearing me out. And if you were here for mainly gacha game content,
I see my way clear.
And you feel disappointed and you want to unsubscribe, thank you for being here and watching the video or 2 you did. But if you want to see the varied content, make sure to like and subscribe, comment your thoughts down below, and I'm especially going to listen to whatever you guys have to say, because I'm open to all sorts of ideas in this discovery phase to try out as many things as I can and see where this channel goes. That's all I have for you. See ya!